It's Ryan guide time. Reinhardt is a living embodiment of a Chad and he plays like one. With Reinhardt, you need to take charge and lead your team. Sitting and waiting will just get you nothing and you need to swing that big German hammer and assert dominance over the enemy team. But in this video, I'm going to cover everything that you need to know to be able to play Reinhardt successfully and lead your team to victory. But before we get into the guide, if you enjoyed the video or learned something new, why not leave a like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything and it helps my channel grow. But let's jump right into Reinhardt's kit. Reinhardt has 300 normal health and 200 armor for a total of 500 HP, which makes him one tanky boy. But let's start with Reinhardt's passive Steadfast. This passive provides Ryan with a 30% knockback reduction. It's really simple and a solid passive that helps Ryan push forward and lead the team. Reinhardt's primary fire is his rocket hammer. He swings this hammer about once every second in a large arc in front of him. This hammer will deal 85 damage to every target that it impacts with. The hammer has a max range of 5 meters, but I'll talk more on the range of the hammer a bit later when I delve into the more complex parts of Reinhardt's kit. The hammer will cleave everything in its range, so you cannot hide behind shields or use people as cover, as it will just hit you all behind. Reinhardt's secondary fire is his barrier field. When holding secondary fire, Reinhardt will hold out his barrier. This barrier has 1600 health, and while it is out, Reinhardt has a minus 30% movement speed penalty. When the shield has not been used for 2 seconds, it will begin to regen at a rate of 200 health a second. If the shield health reaches 0, the shield will break, and the ability will go on a 5-second cooldown where it cannot be used. Reinhardt's first ability is Charge. When activated after the short 0.6 second cast time, Reinhardt will charge forward at 300% movement speed for 3 seconds. While charging, his ability to turn is significantly reduced and can only be stopped once he hits a wall or he charges for the max duration. If he comes into direct contact with an enemy, he will grab that enemy and continue to charge. If Reinhardt hits a wall while he has a pinned target, he will deal 300 damage to the target. If Ryan isn't close enough to grab the target, but they are still close enough to Ryan when he charges past, or if he already has a pinned target, Ryan will knock back any enemies near him and deal 50 damage to anyone in his way. Charge has a 10-second cooldown. Reinhardt's secondary ability is Fire Strike. When activated, Reinhardt after a 0.45 second cast time will throw out a projectile that deals 100 damage. This projectile is pinpoint and moves quite slow, meaning that leading your targets at range is a must. It will pierce through targets, meaning that you cannot just hide behind shields or teammates to avoid getting hit by it. There is a short 0.64 second recovery after throwing your Fire Strike where you cannot swing your hammer or shield, so you are exploitable in that window. Fire Strike has a 6-second cooldown. Finally, Reinhardt's ultimate is Earth Shatter. When activated after the 0.45 second cast time, Reinhardt will slam his hammer into the ground and will send out a shockwave in a cone shape in front of Reinhardt. Enemies hit by the shockwave will receive 50 damage and will be knocked down onto the ground for 2.5 seconds. The cone has a max range of 20 meters and does have a vertical reach of 2 meters, so it can hit people on top of some objects and while they're in the air. Also note that unlike all of his other abilities, Earth Shatter does not go through shields, and having a shield up is one of the most effective ways to fully counter the ultimate. That's everything within this kit, so let's talk about all the concepts and tricks that you need to know to create a main tank difference in your games. First, let's talk about all the little details and tech about Reinhardt's hammer that you can utilize to gain an advantage. First, we need to talk about how Reinhardt's hammer hitbox works. Ryan will either swing the hammer from left to right or right to left. In the swing, the hitbox will move with the hammer, so you will hit targets that are closer to the hammer first, and then hit the others as the hammer goes from one side to another. This hitbox also lingers and can actually hit enemies after the hammer has been swung. The final thing to note about the hitbox is that the hammer swing hitbox is actually a triangle and not a segment of a circle, like you would assume. What this means is that the edges, it will actually hit at a farther range. Okay, but how do you actually go about using this tech to your advantage? Well, if you want to hit a target as fast as possible at the furthest range, you should angle your swing so that the target is on the side of the screen that your hammer is going to swing from. This will make sure they get hit first, and it uses the longer hitbox for the more range. Some fun tech you can actually do is just to spin around like crazy and it'll just hit everything around you in a circle. And you know, if you have no idea what's going on in a fight, just spin around and the enemy will be just as confused as you are. It's guaranteed to work. Trust me, I'm a professional. But in short, remember that the hitbox goes from side to side and is furthest at the edges. So let's talk about managing your shield, as it's one of the largest problems I see with Reinhardt players. When you start a fight, your shield should be at full health. What this means is not standing at a choke point achieving nothing. Just wait for the full shield and all your teammates and then start to make your advancements. Going in with a low shield is asking to lose the fight. The best ways to maintain your shield during fights is to follow a couple of rules. Number 1, no taking needless shield damage. If you don't need to block it, then don't. Number 2, use natural cover to break line of sight and let yourself get healed and regen shield. Number 3, let yourself take damage. If you're in a fight and you're getting shot by a DPS, you can just let the damage go straight to you as long as you have a support prepared to heal you during and right after. This will allow them to gain ultimate charge much faster and can lead to one fights, with you having more ult charge and more shield health. Let's talk about the major components about playing Reinhardt, and that is landing and blocking Earth Shatters. Let's talk about landing them first, as it's much more straightforward than blocking them. One of the only things that can block your Earth Shatters is the opposing team's tank line with their shields. So let's have a quick overview on how to land a shatter against each different tank lines. Against Hammond, D.Va and Roadhog, they literally cannot block the shatter. Sure, Roadhog can stun you, but we're talking about blocking, not cancelling. So when playing against them, their backline's free for the taking. Against Sigma and Orisa, they can still block the shatter with their static shield or react quickly to deploy it to block the shatter if they anticipate it. So against them, you'll have to wait for them to place the shield, then either break it or walk past it to land the shatter. Against Xayah, she can react with either bubble to block it, so be aware of her cooldowns and use it on her when you know that they are both down. Against Winston, it's very similar to Orisa and Sigma, but he is far less defensive character and will often leave the backline open. However, if he is playing defensively, just wait for him to bubble and wait it out. The threat of the ultimate is greater than the actual use in this scenario. But finally, we are left with Reinhardt, who is the hardest tank to land a shatter with. And we will talk about this from the perspective of blocking it. Blocking shatters can be quite simple if you know it's coming. So the first thing to do is to try and track their ult charge. Most of the time it will be similar to yours. As long as you have 2 HP left in your shield, you can always just pull it up for a split second and block a shatter. So as long as you're able to hear the audio cue, you'll be able to pull your shield up in time no matter how low health it is. The best and only consistent way to land shatters is to break the enemy team's Rein shield. Since he can always put it up for a split second, it is only guaranteed way to be able to land it. So when playing Rein, never let your shield get broken, as you will just be left defenseless against other Earth Shatters and you will die as a team to a single ultimate. So yeah, against Rein, sometimes it can be literally impossible to land a shatter head on if you don't have the DPS and support to break their shield first. Let's talk about positioning on Rein, as it's one of the most important things at keeping you alive. Having good positioning on Rein can come down to a couple of things. We have natural cover available. Having a wall or object to hide behind or around is essential to having a good positioning on Rein. Another thing to consider is sightlines of both the enemy team and your own. You need to be thinking, can my support heal me? As well as, can my DPS assist me here? If the answer to either of those questions is no, then it is a bad spot and you need to move. Reinhardt is a team character and he will lead a team to victory, but he cannot do it all alone. So remember, utilizing your teammates' abilities will allow you to win fights and win games. The final thing to think about when positioning as Rein is what space you take. Ultimately, the reason you are pushing as Rein is to take space and make it your own. You need to stand somewhere that is meaningful. Make sure the space you create actually means something and will benefit your team. If you stand in the right spot, the game becomes a lot easier no matter what champion you play on, but on a less mechanically demanding character like Reinhardt, it's your ability to make the right decisions that will win games, and positioning is where it starts. But that's all I have to say about Reinhardt and all the things that I believe it's important to be aware about when playing him. I wish you all luck when playing him, and if you learned something new or enjoyed the video, why not leave a like and subscribe. Until next, see you then.
My phone lights up, but it's never you. I can't help but feel so lonely, and all these things that I can't undo. I'm falling apart so slowly.
What am I looking at you for?
He's so weird.
This is not going in the video.